We're hot on the recruiting trail. Who of my top three is going to be the first to sign? And will it be at UConn? You're locked on UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I just want to take a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content here, please take a second to subscribe to the show and also follow the audio versions wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever. It really helps the show grow. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support. It means the world to me, and it keeps us going strong every day. In other news, confirmed yesterday, we worked out a 10% donation of Bleeding Blue for Good. So that's a thanks for being such an amazing part of this community. By you supporting this podcast, you are directly supporting NIL for Bleeding Blue for Good for UConn. So we are excited about that. Now to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers get to bet $5 and they get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, we bring in Sam Lance. Let's get him from Zag's blog, who is killing it out there, getting scoops and news about the top players in the country and really what all of college hoops fans want to know about. Sam, let's bring you in here. Sam, there you are. Sam, first question, before I even ask you how you're doing today, is it's all about us obnoxious UConn fans. We really want to know about my top three, Braylon Mullins, Nico Bundalo, and Eric Reibe. Of those three, who could be the first to sign at UConn? Or maybe there's someone else.
Yeah, of those three you mentioned, I really think Nico Bundalo is probably the top guy there. He just took a visit this past weekend, and the Husky fans showed him a lot of love on Twitter, and he seemed to really enjoy the visit. He had those very, very cool pictures with him up on the backboard with the Natty trophies. So right now, if I had to pick somebody out of those three, I would probably go Nico Bundalo. I know that Braylon Mullins right now, even though UConn has that in-home visit today, I know that Braylon Mullins is a little Indiana, Kentucky leaning right now. And then Eric Reibe just had a very, very nice visit to Lawrence, Kansas. And a lot of the chatter is right now that he could be leaning toward the Jayhawks. But, the same thing kind of happened with Reibe and Creighton. If you remember a couple months ago, there's kind of a lot of Creighton chatter after that visit. So you never really know. UConn is going to get him on campus this coming weekend, and they could change some things whenever he's in stores.
Yeah, it's so I love having guys like you on who really kind of focus on this stuff because it's so fluid. I'll get DMs from not just fans, but like entities that are I call them that because that's what Dan Hurley calls recruiting companies, right? On 24/7. He'll be like outside entities rank players, and we do it differently. So that's my inside joke. But yeah, the outside entities will DM me every once in a while and say, hey, such and such is visiting UConn this weekend, whatever. So it's always so fluid. What have you heard from players about UConn's recruiting style?
Yeah, I mean, really what I've heard is, Dan Hurley, he's a character, and he really utilizes that in his recruiting. I mean, whenever he had MeleekThomas on campus in June, he told him via Meleek, that's what Meleek told me, that, hey, Meleek, you're a badass, and I'm a badass too, so come on down to stores. And I think Dan Hurley's really kind of embracing that kind of badass attitude, that demeanor that he has on the court. And I think in turn, you're kind of seeing him trying to recruit some players who really show a lot of emotion, a lot of passion on the court. And MeleekThomas is certainly one of those. I know Tounde Youssefu, UConn is pretty in the mix with. He's another one of those type of players that just go. And Acaden Lewis from the guard position is another player really like that. And Acaden kind of reminds me a little bit of Steph Castle, has a little Steph Castle in this game, even though he's a lefty. I kind of see that a little bit. But, Yeah, I mean, Dan Hurley, it's about the persona. It's about the mantra with him.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's get into the offers that he is told out are so far, and we're going to do so right after this break. We're going to go pay some bills. Coming up. Well, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial on NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's a fantastic deal. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, which I have, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Guys, if you're a big football fan like I am, at least NFL-wise, please go check this out. That is a phenomenal deal. If in 3 weeks you're not happy, you can cancel. There's no obligation. So just visit FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, we're back with Sam Lance from zagsblog.com. Sam, again, thanks for being here. Let's go through these offers. You started to name a few, and you almost gave away the farm of this second segment, but we didn't let you do that. So let's go to the first one. The biggest name on the board. I got some reports probably about a month ago that there's been a little hiccups with MeleekThomas. I don't know if that's true. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing is, like, you never truly know. Unless I get a source like the one that told me about Braylon Mullins, that is a dear friend of mine, I don't trust it. We just report it and kind of see what happens. MeleekThomas looked like, as you said, he had the playful banter back with Dan Hurley. It looked like there was some momentum for them to get a signing sooner than later. What's the story with him right now? Is he a UConn guy, or is he leaning towards Calipari in Arkansas?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like not a lot of people really know right now where he's leaning, but I mean, Arkansas is certainly in there. Alabama is certainly in there. He's visiting both of those schools this month. Really what I would say from the UConn standpoint,
sure,
I don't think Dan Hurley would have put as much energy of seeing him every single game at Peach Jam. I've heard that they're out to see him at Overtime Elite this week.
Yep, that's true.
I don't think UConn's putting in all of that energy into MeleekThomas unless they really think they're a major player. So I don't really buy in to kind of the rumors that UConn isn't in the picture anymore, because I think they certainly are. And I'll tell you what, MeleekThomas just perfectly fits UConn. He's a dog. He can score. He's just the perfect guard, I think, for Dan Hurley. And he's got a pretty good pitch for him. I mean, Stephon Castle, we kind of mentioned him with Acaden Lewis. Mm-hmm. Well, Stephon Castle is kind of in MeleekThomas's position. He was a top 5-star recruit, and he was just drafted in the top 5 of the NBA draft. And MeleekThomas has told me that in a couple years, he plans on running and being an NBA star. I think Dan Hurley can help him get there.
No, it's a great rundown. Some of the scuttlebutt or whatever was talking about how they've geared their focus towards another guy that you mentioned, Acaden Lewis. Honestly, preferably, I don't care. Like, I mean, personally, like I love them both, but I don't think that's possible. So whoever signs, if we lose them both, then I'd be like, oh, that sucks. But I mean, if you get one of these guys, it's an automatic game changer in your backcourt for 2025. Talk to me about Acaden Lewis. That's the next offer I wanted to talk about. Yeah,
Acaden Lewis is probably one of the highest risers just of the entire summer. His play this summer has been incredible for Team Durant. He can just score the ball, Mark. Like, I tell you what, he has such a deep bag right now of step backs. Like, I saw this one layup. It's on one of his highlight tapes in person, and he just kind of was going left and kind of just flung it, this way with his right hand.
He directed it.
Yep. And I was just like, how in the world did you get that to go? And he got it to go. I mean, he just puts the ball in the basket, and UConn is in a good position with Acaden Lewis. Really, what I'm hearing, it's kind of Syracuse, UConn right now. They're at the top. Syracuse is kind of making a push for him. So I'd look out for those two schools. Of course, North Carolina for Acaden Lewis also has an official visit. I believe it's October 4th, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be another school kind of to look out for there. But yeah, I would say UConn, Syracuse, kind of right up there at the top right now for Acaden Lewis.
Okay. That's good news. I think most UConn fans that listen to this are going to laugh when they hear Syracuse's name. Not because of them being interested, but because it's Syracuse. And I don't know. I think again, you've dealt with some interesting UConn fans. They have their certain way about them. Darius Adams, that name has not kind of come across my desk in a long time.
Yeah.
Have they cooled on him? Is that kind of what I'm hearing as well?
Well, Darius Adams will be visiting. I think his visit actually starts today. It's September 4th through 6th for Darius Adams. With Darius, I think his recruitment has just kind of been on the quieter side.
Okay.
He told Zag's blog that, the schools that he's visiting are the schools that he's focused on. He has the UConn set, and then he has NC State September 6th through 8th, then Notre Dame, Tennessee, Michigan State, and Alabama to round out September. And then he wants to make a decision sometime before his high school season at La Lumiere, which is, of course, rapidly approaching. So really, I think we'll kind of know more about Darius Adams as he kind of gets rolling on these visits, and we're able to catch up with him there. But I think UConn's in a good spot with Darius Adams. Surely, he's getting the first visit. So
question about that. I honestly didn't know that he was coming this week. I know Eric is coming. I think he's coming Saturday, right? The 6th.
Yep, 6th through 8th.
Okay, cool. So Darius, they're back to back on that. That's cool. Question for you on, things that kind of are like the quieter side of things. Does that more talk about how, because I know Dan Hurley is notorious for being like, listen, if you're coming into this program and you're looking for NIL first, don't bother. You know what I mean? So of these guys that I just mentioned before we get to the last 4 on the list, are any of those guys in that category where they're going to have to kind of like quell their NIL ass around a UConn?
I think, MeleekThomas is probably one of those that will command a high dollar amount, with him being, an overtime elite guy, kind of really getting a lot of national attention already. It's just a new era, really, and
right.
College basketball recruiting in general. From numbers and stuff that I've heard just with conversations on various guys, like a lot of these guys are commanding more dollars than high-profile transfers, like a Terrace Reed for you guys. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting. And I think a lot of, once the boozers commit, I think that's kind of the first major NIL kind of domino to start falling here. I think once that happens, we'll kind of see some other commitments and really kind of see that side of things. But really, I think for UConn, MeleekThomas is probably the only person to really kind of worry about with the NIL situation.
When it comes to that marketplace of NIL, we're going off script here, but that's okay. So let's use the boozers, for example. Let's say they both commit to wherever. We don't even have to name a school. So their commitment, whatever their NIL dollar amount is, do you feel like that sets the market? Is that what you're saying? Or is it someone like an AJ DeBonsa, who I was just about to talk about, whose NIL deal is going to be probably astronomical?
I think with the boozers, yes, it's setting the market thing, but it's also just, allowing things to go in place. Like, for example, if they choose Miami, then, Koa Pete might be more Duke leaning now because he knows the boozers won't be there. Just
Fair.
Kind of things like that, kind of just the dominoes for schools
I gotcha.
who they're bringing in falling. But yeah, I agree that, kind of getting those conversations of what the NIL price would be for the boozers would kind of set the market a little bit.
Yeah. And I wonder, because I don't know if you've heard this, do you think that there's ever any conversations that are tough conversations that coaches have to have with kids or handlers where they ask for a high dollar amount and they're like, you're not worth that? Do you think that ever happens?
I'm sure it does. I'm really not sure how those conversations go. That would be a story that I would love to do and kind of dig up, just see how those conversations really go with players. Because it's not very transparent right now. Like, it's not like you're, like this guy got $2 million or $1 million, or he's getting this or that. Like, it's not very transparent right now. So, it's kind of hard to tell.
For sure. Let's run through the rest of this list. We've already talked about my top 3, so I'm not going to mention them because we kind of got an update on them. But AJ DeBonsa is not coming to UConn. They offered him. Tell me why.
Well, UConn's not in the top 7. that's pretty much it. I mean, Ace Divansta kind of was taking the reins of the recruitment, and he and AJ kind of worked on that list together. So those were the finalists. Those were all the schools that they were going to visit. That's pretty much why right there. I mean, Ace said that the schools that were contacting him the most, reaching out the most, were the ones that made the list. So seems like UConn just wasn't really, reaching out a ton.
Yeah, I think that's one of those where like they're the pretty girl and they're like, you got to come to me. Like I'm not gonna come to you. I mean, I would imagine now with these back-to-back titles, I bet you Dan Hurley has a little bit of a puffing out of the chest mentality when it comes to the top recruits, and I don't blame him. So not going to get into a bidding war. All right, another one. One of my favorite prospects of this whole thing is Nate Ament. What can you tell me about Nate Ament? Any chance with UConn? If not, where do you think he's going?
Yeah, with Nate Ament, I actually haven't talked to him or seen him play this summer in person, but I'll say this. I watched the Slam high school game. There's no doubt in my mind that Nate Ament was the best player on the court in that game. And there were AJ Divansta. There are a lot of really good players out there. Nate Ament put on a show. Nate Ament to me is the competitor for AJ for the #1 draft spot in 2026. In my opinion, I think he's kind of that other guy right now. Really, recruitment-wise, it's another guy who's been really quiet. He recently, I believe he had Virginia and Kentucky visits set, and he ended up pushing those back. I believe that was per Travis Branham. He pushed that back. He said he's going to take his time with his recruitment, and he told Zag's blog at the UA Elite that he's going to be kind of a late decision maker in this process, so probably like a spring decision maker would be my guess. So it's just really early for Nate Ament right now, and his kind of buzz and stock rise over the summer has had all the blue bloods coming in and calling. But what he told us is he's planning visits with Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, and UConn, among some other schools. So look out for a Nate Ament UConn visit. I think UConn would certainly be a great fit. I mean, I think any school that I just named would be a great fit for Nate Ament. So he is
one of my favorite. Yeah, he wasn't in my top 3 because there just isn't a lot of idea around. Saw the Virginia stuff. I know that's where he's from, right? I think that's also part of it. But look, I've seen him play. He is a phenomenal player. He's so smooth. He's long. He's fast. You're right. He's the prototypical NBA style player. 6'9", maybe 6'10" now. I don't know. Like he's growing. He's one of these guys who, by the time he's 20 years old, he may be 7 foot. You know what I mean? Like like a Giannis situation where he comes into the league at 6'10" and all of a sudden he's 7'1" or whatever. But he does have a Kevin Durant feel that he can kind of pull up from anywhere. Yeah, I mean, Dan Hurley would be lucky to have him. So we'll see about that. Just 2 more in this before we do one more promo and then close out the show. I have been asked about Chris Cenac. Am I saying his name right? Chris Cenac Jr.?
I think it's Cenac.
Cenac? Okay. So center out of Link Academy, the prep school there. Tell me what your thoughts are. UConn has offered him. I don't hear a lot of stuff about him. I don't know if he's visiting or if they're out of the mix. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so Cenac, he has that top 12. It's Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Baylor, Houston, Kentucky, Louisville, LSU, Michigan State, Tennessee, Texas, and UConn. Man, that was a lot to say. That's really narrowing.
It's a lot of schools
there. We've actually had some recent news from Chris Cenac. He scheduled some visits. He's got Tennessee September 13th, Auburn September 20th, Kentucky September 27th, and LSU November 9th. I'm not sure if he is going to set a UConn visit, if that's really in play. The schools I'm hearing most for Cenac are LSU. I believe he's from the area.
New Orleans, yep.
Don't count me totally correct on that. I'm not exactly sure, but I believe he's from that area. And then Kentucky is another name I hear a lot. Arkansas. I don't think UConn's really in there with.
Yeah, I don't either. I agree with you. I don't think he is either. He reminds me a lot of kind of a a player that is, and I'm not saying this in this disparaging way. I know UConn fans will probably laugh at this, but he reminds me of like a 5-star that Duke would get to kind of that like almost like stashes on their bench that ends up transferring. He doesn't feel like the prototypical UConn player. I don't think he's a particularly good shooter. I think he's a great athlete, good shot blocker.
He's got a very interesting, unique skill set for sure.
Yeah, he just doesn't. I just don't think he's the type of player that Dan Hurley goes after. But I've been wrong in the past. I'll be wrong again. Last one on the list. He's visiting. He's a power forward from California. You said his name probably better than I did. Tounde Youssefu, right? An undersized power forward from California. Tell me about him. I know nothing about his game. I've only watched a few highlights. Like I said, undersized, good athlete, pretty explosive. Talk to me about him.
Tounde is probably the most athletic person in the EYBL, in my opinion, from watching. I mean, I'm trying to think of just maybe some other names off the top of my head, and Tounde is the one that stands out for me. So, I mean, he's super athletic, and really I think the big thing with him is he's worked on his jump shot this summer a lot and has started to be very confident pulling up from 3, pulling up from mid-range. I believe the game, I think they played NH Lightning if they won that game, they would be in the Peach Jam field. If they lost, they would be out. Tounde had a really good game there. I think he had like 35 points or something just absolutely ridiculous in that game. So he's just a confident player now, and just a really good athlete, a scorer on the wing who's really athletic. And right now, his recruitment, Tounde, he's got some visits set in stone. He's got UConn coming up September 21st through 22nd. He just came off a Baylor visit, and then he has Kansas, Kentucky in October, and then Arizona State is the final visit, the 2nd through the 3rd. He's also taken Arizona and USC. Really what I've been hearing from, just kind of surrounding Tounde's recruitment is Baylor, Kentucky. Those are kind of the leaders right now. And, of course, after the Baylor visit is when Tounde canceled a couple officials. It was Tennessee, and there's another school that he ended up canceling. But, yeah, right now I'd probably classify Baylor as the leader.
As the favorite? Okay. As long as we're in the mix. Sometimes all it takes is that visit, right? Maybe some change some thoughts and minds. All right, we're going to go pay some bills and come back, and I want to hear from Sam on who he thinks will be the first domino. We talked about the boozers maybe signing, setting the market, NIL and otherwise, but who does he think will be the first domino to drop for UConn in this recruiting cycle? Coming up after this. When you're hiring for a small business, you need to find the right professionals who can make an impact. That's why I always recommend LinkedIn Jobs. It's not just the job board. LinkedIn Jobs helps you connect with the professionals you won't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively job hunting, but are open to the right role. In fact, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you might be missing out. And here's the best part. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within just 24 hours. So hire like a professional with LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Oh, we're just doing Yahoo Finance. We're not doing that. All right. We are back with Sam Lance with zagsblog.com. He is on the recruiting beat, doing a fantastic job. Let me ask you a question. Are you as big a tennis fan as Adam is when it comes to this stuff, or no?
No. I love hoops, man. That's what I love. I played baseball growing up, and, I got to play fantasy football, so I'm pretty invested in that.
I got you. Why don't you tell people where they can find your stuff? If UConn fans and otherwise, this will definitely be seen by more than just UConn fans. So where can they find your podcasts? Who else do you obviously work for Zag's blog? Anything else that you're doing so they can try to find you?
Yeah, I'm at Slants Hoops on Twitter. That will be where pretty much all of my stuff is posted. Then I also do the Hum, a Kansas basketball podcast via the Field of 68. We're coming out with episodes every Wednesday leading up to Big 12 Media Day. And then I'm actually, haven't announced this yet, but I'll be one of the writers for the Field of 68 Daily newsletter. this year, and I'll be doing Thursday mornings recap and Wednesday college basketball this year. So be sure to subscribe to the Daily too. And, of course, my guy Adam Zagoria, Zags blog, I wouldn't be where I am now just as a journalist without Adam. So go to Zags blog. I will say we're trying to keep up with On3 24/7 with all this stuff and really be one of the leaders in kind of the recruiting space. We got our official visit tracker that's up, that's tracking, where all the guys are going. And we have our intel piece that is up that kind of just breaks down the top guys, what's going on with them. And both of those are updated literally right whenever we get updates, we go in there and update those. So it's good stuff over at Zags blog right now.
Awesome. Well, when you talk to Adam today, make sure you tell him I say hello. He's a friend of the program. Love him. He's a good dude. He's been on a couple times. So really appreciate you guys, both of you. So, all right. So let's dive into the last segment of the day, which is who will be the first domino to drop for UConn? So is anyone closer than we think? And who do you think will be first?
Yeah, I think it's going to be either Nico Bundalo or Darius Adams would be my guess. Darius Adams, of course, we talked about, he's probably going to be nearing that decision in October. I think UConn could put themselves in a great position, and Darius Adams is almost a perfect fit in my mind. I mean, he shoots the ball extremely well from three. I think he has probably one of the best jumpers and shots in the 2025 class. He's really just kind of a do-it-all guy out on the wing, and in the slam game, he had the winning steal and free throws to seal the deal in that game and win the game for his team. So he's a winner, first and foremost, and that matches pretty well with UConn. I believe
that'd be music. That'd be music to Dan Hurley's ears. He wants winners. I can tell you that. So last question of this, and then we'll let you go about your day. What would be considered a win in your eyes for UConn? Is it two of these guys? Is it three? Like how many recruits do you think that, because the formula lately has been, outside of that large class where Steph was a part of it that stayed this year, the 4 sophomores remain from the recruiting class from 2023. It looks like they offered quite a few guys because maybe they're expecting some guys to transfer, whatever it is. What's the target number? Is it 2 of these guys? Is it 3? What's your thoughts?
I think if they get 2 of the elite guys, that would be pretty good class, can kind of go portal from there. And the 2 being either Thomas or Lewis for the guard position. And then, either Bundalo, Ament, Greer kind of for that, power forward type position. And then I think Darius Adams would kind of be the cherry on top if you're able to get like a Lewis Adams Bundalo or a Thomas Adams Bundalo. That would be a pretty good class. I mean, I think 2 to 3 is definitely probably what I'm thinking for UConn. Just makes the most sense. I haven't gotten too into depth on what their roster will look like, after this coming season. I've done that with Kansas, obviously, because I do the Kansas podcast, but I don't know how many people UConn are losing, so that kind of really determines things. I think Kansas will take a lot more high schoolers this class just because they're losing a ton.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting situation because they're not technically losing that many guys. I mean, they're losing impact players. They're going to lose Alex Caravan to the pros. Yeah. Samson Johnson probably is going to end up playing somewhere. I don't know if he'll be. I think he might have 1 year of eligibility, so I'd have to check that. But it could be 2, maybe 3 guys. Hassan Diarra, their starting point guard. So we're looking at 3, potentially 2 or 3 guys leaving. But we also have a really deep team this year, and maybe not everyone gets minutes. And then you have to figure out who transfers, if there's a transfer, because we didn't have too many defections this year. So those will be the questions, and that's why they're coaching and we're doing podcasts. And you're writing for multiple outfits. So that's for them to decide and for us to report. So, but I appreciate you coming on. Real quick before I go, thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen today. Now check out Locked On College Football Podcast for NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. Locked On College Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. For Sam Lance of ZagsBlogs.com, I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected. Make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.